Babylon the Great. In the 17th chapter of the final book of the Bible, the Apostle John is carried away in the Spirit into a wilderness. There, he witnesses one of the most striking and terrifying images in all of sacred literature. He sees a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. The beast is covered with blasphemous names, and it has 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman herself is dressed in purple and scarlet. She glitters with gold, precious stones, and pearls. In her hand, she holds a golden cup filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. And written on her forehead is a title that has puzzled and terrified readers for nearly 2,000 years. The text calls it a mystery. The title reads, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. John adds a chilling detail to this vision. He says he saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When John sees her, he admits that he is completely astonished. But the angel standing with him offers to explain the mystery of the woman and the beast she rides. Yet, even with the angel's explanation, the true identity of Babylon the Great remains one of the most fiercely debated mysteries in the history of Christianity. What exactly is John describing? Is this a literal prophecy predicting that the ancient, ruined city of Babylon in Mesopotamia will be rebuilt at the end of time to rule the world once more? Was it a secret, political code used by early believers to criticize the Roman Empire without being executed for treason? Or is Babylon a timeless, spiritual symbol representing every corrupt human empire that builds its wealth through violence, greed, and the exploitation of human lives? To answer these questions, we must first step back into the world that produced this text. We cannot understand John's vision without understanding the profound historical trauma associated with the name of Babylon. For the ancient Jewish people, Babylon was not merely a distant city on the banks of the Euphrates River. It was the ultimate symbol of imperial violence, devastation, and exile. In the early 6th century before the time of Christ, the Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, besieged the city of Jerusalem. The biblical accounts describe a horrific catastrophe. The city walls were breached. The magnificent temple built by King Solomon was completely destroyed, burned to the ground. The sacred vessels were looted, and the majority of the population was violently uprooted and forced into a long, bitter exile in Babylon. The trauma of this event scarred the cultural and spiritual memory of the people. Babylon became synonymous with the pride of humanity setting itself against the authority of God. It was the empire of arrogance, the kingdom that thought it could touch the heavens and dominate the earth. Decades later, the literal city of Babylon was conquered by the Persians, and over the following centuries, it slowly crumbled into ruin and obscurity. By the time the Book of Revelation was written, near the end of the 1st century, the original city of Babylon was essentially a wasteland of ruins in the desert. So why would John use the name of a dead, ruined city to describe the ultimate threat to God's people? The answer lies in a new catastrophe that had just shattered the world of the early Christians and the Jewish community. In the year 70 of the 1st century, history aggressively repeated itself. The Roman Empire, responding to a massive rebellion, marched on Jerusalem. Just as the Babylonians had done 6 centuries earlier, the Roman legions breached the walls, slaughtered the inhabitants, and completely destroyed the Second Temple. Once again, the center of worship was burned, and the sacred artifacts were carried off as trophies to grace the streets of a foreign capital. For the people living through this nightmare, Rome had become the new Babylon. The parallels were impossible to ignore. Both empires had destroyed the holy city. Both empires demanded total allegiance. Both empires grew rich through conquest and the suffering of the innocent. But in the book of Revelation, the text provides specific clues that seem to point directly at the powers ruling John's immediate world, while also leaving the door open for a much larger, darker interpretation. Continuo para proxima part 2. The text of Revelation chapter 17 provides a crucial clue that grounds John's vision in a specific historical reality. As the angel explains the mystery of the scarlet beast, he states that the 7 heads of the beast are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. To a first-century reader, this description was not a vague spiritual riddle. It was a direct geographic coordinate. In the ancient world, Rome was universally famous as the city built on 7 hills. The Festival of the 7 Hills was a recognized Roman holiday, and imperial coins were minted depicting the goddess Roma resting securely upon them. By placing the great prostitute on these 7 mountains, John was identifying the capital of the Roman Empire as the New Babylon. It was a dangerous piece of political subversion wrapped in apocalyptic symbolism to protect those who read it. But the angel's explanation does not stop there. He adds that the 7 mountains also represent 7 kings. He notes that 5 have fallen, 1 is currently in power, and another has not yet come. For generations, historians and biblical scholars have attempted to align these kings with the succession of Roman emperors, from Augustus and Tiberius to Nero and Domitian. While the exact historical timeline remains a subject of intense academic debate, the underlying message is unmistakable. Babylon the Great is deeply entangled with human political power, riding upon the machinery of empire to maintain her dominance. The true nature of this dominance is fully exposed in the 18th chapter of Revelation. Here, John describes the sudden, catastrophic destruction of Babylon. Yet, surprisingly, the people who mourn her fall are not primarily religious figures or kings. They are the merchants and the sea captains of the earth. The text presents a detailed, devastating inventory of the city's economic system. It lists cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, and every kind of expensive wood. It catalogues ivory, bronze, iron, marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, and chariots. This is an exact mirror of the vast global supply chain that flowed into the ports of ancient Rome, feeding the insatiable appetite of its wealthiest citizens. But the final item on this massive shipping manifest reveals the true cost of Babylon's luxury. After listing the horses and chariots, the text concludes with the cargo of human beings, literally described as the bodies and souls of men. This is one of the most powerful economic critiques in all of ancient literature. The Roman Empire was built on the brutal foundation of slavery. At the height of its power, millions of enslaved people worked in its mines, fields, and households, treated merely as property to fuel the engine of imperial prosperity. By placing human souls at the end of this merchant inventory, the book of Revelation strips away the glittering facade of Rome. It exposes the terrifying truth that Babylon the Great treats human life as just another commodity to be bought, sold, and consumed. For early Christians living under Roman rule, this vision offered a profound sense of clarity. They were surrounded by the overwhelming wealth and military might of an empire that demanded to be worshipped. The imperial cult required citizens to offer sacrifices to the emperor, declaring that Caesar is Lord. To refuse was to risk economic ruin, social isolation, or execution. By revealing Rome as the bloodthirsty Babylon, John was warning his readers not to be seduced by her wealth or intimidated by her power. However, if Babylon the Great was solely a first-century code for the Roman Empire, the prophecy would have lost its meaning when Rome eventually collapsed centuries later. But the book of Revelation was not written merely as a political pamphlet for a single generation. It is a book of prophetic theology that sees patterns in human history. During the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, the imagery of Babylon was aggressively repurposed. Reformers pointed to the corruption, wealth, and political power of the medieval papacy, arguing that the institutional church itself had become Babylon the Great. This interpretation ignited fierce theological wars that divided Europe. In response, Catholic theologians argued that Babylon referred either to the historical pagan Rome of the past or to a literal rebuilt city that would emerge briefly at the very end of history. This debate reveals the inherent danger in John's apocalyptic symbol. Every generation is tempted to point at their political or religious enemies and call them Babylon. But this narrow view risks missing the true scope of the warning. As history marched forward, scholars and theologians began to realize something deeply unsettling. The scarlet beast was still roaming the earth, and the golden cup was simply passing to new hands. Continua para a proxima parte tres. As the centuries passed, the literal Roman Empire eventually collapsed under its own weight, yet the apocalyptic image of Babylon the Great did not lose its power or relevance. The fall of Rome forces us to look deeper into the literary and theological genius of the book of Revelation. Many modern biblical scholars and theologians propose a broader, more profound understanding of this terrifying figure. They argue that John's vision intentionally weaves together prophetic imagery from the ancient past, the political reality of his present, and a timeless warning for the future. To fully grasp the identity of the great prostitute, we have to recognize how heavily the text relies on the ancient Hebrew prophets. Long before John wrote his apocalyptic vision, prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah pronounced devastating judgments against the historical city of Babylon. They condemned her not just for her military violence against Israel, but for her supreme arrogance. Isaiah described ancient Babylon as a kingdom that said in its heart, "I am, and there is none besides me." By adopting this exact language in Revelation, John is signaling that the spirit of Babylon did not die when the ancient city fell to the Persians. By combining the ancient rebellion of the Tower of Babel, the historical trauma of Nebuchadnezzar's empire, and the first-century tyranny of Rome, the text creates a powerful archetype. Babylon the Great is not merely a single city on a map, nor is it limited to a specific date in history. Instead, it represents any human system in any era that elevates itself above the authority of God and exploits humanity for its own glorious enrichment. It is the dark shadow of civilization, the organized rebellion of humanity that builds monuments to its own glory while stepping on the necks of the vulnerable. This interpretation is strongly supported by the overarching structure of the book of Revelation itself. Throughout the text, John deliberately contrasts two symbolic women who represent two symbolic cities. On one side is Babylon the Great, the corrupt prostitute who trades in human souls and is destined for total destruction. On the other side is the Bride of the Lamb, representing the New Jerusalem, a city characterized by purity, divine presence, and the healing of the nations. Every reader is forced to choose which city they belong to and which allegiance will define their life. This choice is made explicit in the 18th chapter, where a voice from heaven issues a desperate command. The voice cries out, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For the early Christians, this was not a call to physical migration. They could not simply pack their bags and leave the Roman Empire, because the empire encompassed their entire known world. Rather, it was a profound spiritual and ethical command. It was a warning to resist the seductive comfort of imperial wealth, to refuse participation in the corrupt trade guilds that required sacrifices to the emperor, and to maintain their allegiance to Christ even when threatened with economic ruin or death. There are still traditions within modern Christianity that look for a literal physical fulfillment in the future. Some interpreters anticipate the actual rebuilding of the ancient Mesopotamian city, while others attempt to identify a modern superpower, a specific political institution, or a future global economic system as the final manifestation of the great prostitute. While these views remain highly popular in certain circles, they often struggle to account for how deeply the text was originally anchored in the everyday struggles of the first-century church. Furthermore, constantly looking for a future Babylon can blind us to the Babylons that currently exist. The brilliance of John's apocalyptic vision lies in its timeless, piercing warning. Babylon is always present. She offers the same golden cup in the ancient world, the medieval period, and the modern era. The names of the kings change, and the specific commodities on the cargo ships evolve from ancient spices and silk to modern digital wealth and industrial power, but the underlying system remains tragically identical. It is the relentless pursuit of absolute power, sustained by pride, mass deception, and the systematic devaluation of human life. So, who is Babylon the Great? The historical evidence, the biblical context, and the theological depth of the text together suggest a beautifully layered reality. For the Apostle John and his original persecuted audience, she was undoubtedly the Roman Empire, a terrifying superpower drunk on the blood of the early martyrs. But in the grand, sweeping narrative of biblical theology, she is much more. She is the ultimate symbol of humanity in organized rebellion. She is the city of man, built on the shifting foundations of greed and violence, inherently unstable and destined to collapse when the final judgment of God arrives. Yet, Babylon does not rule alone. The text makes it clear that her power is borrowed and her alliance is fatal. She rides upon a terrifying beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, a creature that ultimately turns against her in a violent, chaotic betrayal. But what exactly does this beast represent, and how does it connect to the infamous, heavily debated number 666? If you would like our next investigation to uncover the historical and biblical truth behind the beast of Revelation, leave the word beast in the comments below.